Imagine discovering that the one guarding your child is a wild bobcat. When Claire and Daniel adopted baby Harper, they never expected her protector to be Sage, a rescued bobcat with piercing eyes and quiet instincts. But behind that wild gaze lies a truth no one could foresee. Strange behavior, chilling footage, and a horrifying secret begin to unravel. What started as a peaceful home turns into a gripping race to uncover what's really happening. This isn't just a tale of animal instinct, it's a warning about what we often fail to see right under our own roof. Before we dive into the story, please leave a comment below to let me know where in the world you're watching from today. Your engagement means the world to us. If you find this story truly captivating, please support us with a like and a follow. Every like and follow from you is a great motivation for us to continue creating more stories. And if you have any feedback, don't hesitate to leave it in the comments below. We are always ready to listen and improve to make our future stories even better. Thank you sincerely. Every night, without fail, the bobcat lay beneath the crib, golden eyes glowing in the dark like embers. She never slept until the baby did. She never left unless someone entered the room. At first, the family thought it was cute, charming even, but that was before anyone realized what she was guarding against. The Whitakers' cabin sat quietly on the edge of the Green Mountains in northern Vermont, embraced by towering pines and a thick hush that only deep forest could offer. The cedarwood home, hand-built by Daniel's grandfather, was a sanctuary of peace, a place where birdsong replaced city noise and time slowed to the rhythm of seasons. The air carried the scent of moss and firewood, and windows framed views of snowy ridges or golden fields, depending on the time of year. It was here that Daniel and Claire sought a simpler life, one where healing might finally take root. Claire Whitaker was a children's book illustrator whose gentle soul matched the softness in her pencil strokes. She worked from the sunroom, where light filtered through hanging plants and sketches of storybook animals adorned the walls. Daniel, her husband of 6 years, was a freelance electrical engineer with a quiet strength and a love for wilderness. Their love was steady, but not without trial, especially after 5 years of struggling to conceive. Sage entered their lives during one of the lowest moments. The bobcat, barely 6 months old at the time, had been found limping near a trailhead after a storm. Her leg was fractured and she was half-starved. Daniel had rescued her with the intent to rehabilitate and release. But Sage never left. She returned again and again until the Whitakers gave in and got a special permit to keep her legally. From the start, Sage seemed drawn to Claire in a way that defied explanation. When Claire finally became pregnant, after all the heartbreak after the miscarriages, Sage began a new ritual. Every night she curled tightly around Claire's abdomen as though she sensed the life growing inside. It was uncanny, protective, beautiful, and just a little unsettling. After baby Harper was born, Sage's nightly watch didn't stop. Instead, it intensified. She refused to sleep in her own space. She only relaxed when Harper was in her line of sight. The family laughed it off at first, chalking it up to Sage's quirky devotion. But then came the growls. The way she tensed when visitors arrived. The way she placed herself between Harper and others, not aggressively, but unmistakably guarding. Claire first noticed the shift one crisp October evening. Harper was just over 2 months old, and the family was starting to find rhythm in their new life. As Daniel cooked dinner, Claire sat with Harper in her lap, telling stories softly while Sage lay stretched across the rug. A knock at the door startled them. It was Margaret, Daniel's mother, stopping by unannounced. Sage immediately rose and stood beside the crib, her muscles taut. She didn't growl, but she didn't sit either. Claire tried to coax her away with soft words, but Sage stood firm until Margaret left. She's protective, Claire murmured to Daniel later that night. It's like she thinks we don't see what she sees. Daniel, used to Sage's unusual nature, smiled. She's always been that way with you. I guess she's extended that loyalty to Harper now. But it wasn't just Margaret. Over the following weeks, Sage's behavior escalated around anyone who came near the baby. The mailman, a delivery person, a neighbor dropping off homemade muffins. Sage's eyes would narrow. Her body would go still. She wouldn't attack, but she wouldn't retreat either. Then came the first real confrontation. Claire's old friend Renee visited for coffee one afternoon, hoping to meet Harper. Claire hadn't seen her in over a year, and Renee's bubbly warmth was a welcome comfort. That comfort shattered the moment Renee reached toward Harper. Sage moved between them, slowly, deliberately, her ears flat, her tail low. A guttural growl vibrated in her throat. "Sage!" Claire gasped. "It's okay, she's a friend." But the Bobcat didn't move. Renee stepped back, eyes wide. "Well, I guess she's serious about her babysitting job," Renee joked nervously. Claire laughed, but unease took root. Later that night, after Harper had fallen asleep and Sage had resumed her usual position under the crib, Claire and Daniel sat by the fireplace, talking quietly. "She's never reacted like that to anyone," Claire said, staring into the flames. "Not even to strangers." Daniel nodded slowly. "She's not attacking, but she's on edge, and always with Harper." "Do you think she's sensing something we're missing?" Daniel didn't answer right away. "I don't know, but maybe it's time we paid closer attention." Sage lay still under Harper's crib that night, her golden eyes fixed on the hallway beyond. Claire watched from the doorway, arms folded tightly, 1,000 thoughts racing. "What are you trying to tell us, girl?" She didn't know it yet, but that question would soon tear open the veil over a truth no one wanted to believe. And Sage, she wasn't just guarding a baby. She was guarding the line between innocence and something unspeakable. You trust your best friend? You'd leave your baby in her arms without a second thought. But what if your wild animal doesn't trust her and starts to act like she's protecting your child from something only she can sense? 2 months later, winter had settled over Vermont. Snow piled gently along the windowsills of the Whitaker cabin, and icicles clung to the gutters like silver teeth. Inside, the warmth of the wood stove and the smell of cinnamon from Claire's baking made the home feel safe. Or so it seemed. Claire, now juggling deadlines from a new publishing contract, had started relying on a familiar face for help, her longtime friend Renee Dalton. Renee, in between jobs and happy to assist, offered to babysit Harper 2 to 3 days a week. At first, the arrangement seemed perfect. Claire had time to draw, Daniel could focus on engineering projects, and Harper received loving attention. But not everyone in the house agreed. Renee Dalton had been Claire's roommate in college, her maid of honor, and Harper's honorary auntie. She was charismatic and good with children, often bringing little gifts or making Harper laugh with exaggerated faces and silly songs. But Sage, the Bobcat, had no such fondness. From the moment Renee began babysitting, her posture changed. She stopped lounging in the sunroom, stopped napping during the day. Whenever Renee arrived, Sage's ears went back, and her body grew still, like a sentinel on high alert. Also introduced was Margaret Whitaker, Daniel's widowed mother, who visited from time to time and immediately sensed something off. "I don't trust that girl," she said bluntly after meeting Renee again. "She's too smooth, too quick to please." Claire brushed off the comment. "She's just enthusiastic." Margaret had only narrowed her eyes. Or hiding something. Sage's behavior began to grow more alarming. She refused to leave Harper's side whenever Renee was in the house. When Renee would carry Harper to the crib, Sage would pace beneath it, tail flicking. On more than one occasion, she inserted herself between Renee and the crib, her eyes burning with distrust. "I don't know what's gotten into her," Claire confessed to Daniel one evening as snow fell outside their bedroom window. "She's never liked Renee, but this is different. It's like she's trying to block her." "Has Sage ever actually attacked?" Daniel asked, concerned but practical. "No," Claire admitted. "But she growls, she watches, and Harper only ever cries when Renee holds her. Not with us, not with Margaret, not even with the pediatrician. Just Renee." Claire tried to rationalize it. Maybe Sage was just overly protective. Maybe she sensed Claire's own hidden unease, the guilt of leaving Harper, even with a friend. She watched as Sage shadowed Renee through the house. The Bobcat didn't relax, didn't rest. She simply watched. That unblinking golden stare, day after day. One afternoon, Claire returned early from a grocery run and paused at the door. Through the window she saw Renee placing Harper in the crib. Nothing unusual, but Sage stood rigid beside the crib, her ears flat and teeth barely bared. When Claire opened the door, Renee jumped. "You're back early." Claire nodded slowly. "Just a few things. Everything okay?" "Perfect," Renee smiled tightly. "Your little girl is a gem." Sage didn't move. She stayed beside Harper until Renee left that day. Claire and Daniel planned a dinner out, just a short break, their first real evening alone since Harper's birth. Margaret was out of town visiting her sister. There was only one logical person to babysit: Renee. Before leaving, Claire hesitated. Sage was pacing in the living room, ears twitching. "Maybe we should just cancel," she whispered to Daniel. He squeezed her hand. "We'll only be 15 minutes away. Renee knows Harper's routine, and we need this, Claire. Just one night." Claire nodded. "Okay. Just one night." They didn't make it through the main course. Daniel's phone buzzed violently on the table. It was Renee. "Mark, Claire," her voice crackled, panicked. "You have to come home now." "What's wrong?" Claire's voice rose. "Is Harper okay?" "She's fine, but it's Sage. She's gone mad. She tried to attack me when I put Harper down. I had to lock myself in the bathroom. I can't get to her. She's guarding the nursery like she's possessed." The drive home, though only 15 minutes, felt eternal. Claire's hands trembled on her lap. Daniel didn't speak, eyes fixed on the road, jaw clenched tight. When they arrived, the house was quiet. Inside, they followed Harper's soft cries to the nursery. The baby was standing in the crib, tear-streaked but unharmed. Sage lay beneath the crib, perfectly still, eyes alert and calm. Claire rushed to Harper, scooping her into her arms. The baby stopped crying instantly. Daniel found Renee in the bathroom, still shaken. "Is she locked up?" she demanded. "She's with Claire," Daniel replied, his voice careful. "What exactly happened?" Renee stammered. "I was tucking Harper in, just like always. Sage came flying in like a monster. I thought she was going to rip my throat out." Later that night, with Harper sleeping peacefully, and Sage once again curled beneath the crib, Claire sat at the kitchen table with a cold cup of tea. "She didn't try to hurt Harper," she murmured. "She never has," Daniel replied. "But what if she was trying to stop something else from happening?" Daniel paused, then said quietly, "I'm checking the security footage tomorrow." Outside the window, snow continued to fall. Inside, Sage lifted her head, eyes gleaming, as if she understood that finally someone was ready to listen. Sometimes it takes a predator to spot another. When Daniel reviewed the nursery's camera footage, he wasn't prepared for what he'd find. or how clearly their wild guardian had seen what they had missed. The morning sun shimmered on the snow-covered trees outside the cabin, but inside, tension hung thick. Claire had taken Harper to Margaret's house for the day, needing space, needing air. Daniel stayed behind, alone in his office with a mug of untouched coffee and the remote access to the home security footage. The cameras had been installed when they adopted Sage, part of the legal conditions for housing a bobcat in a residential space. Most days, they were just a passive safety measure. Today, they held answers. Daniel, now caught between logic and instinct, sat down not as a father, but as an analyst. His hands moved automatically, scrubbing through hours of footage. He wasn't sure what he was looking for. A pattern. A threat. Maybe even a misunderstanding. But deep down, he knew. Sage had been trying to show them something. The footage started benign. Renee entered the nursery with Harper in her arms, singing softly. She placed the baby in the crib, pulled the blanket up. Sage lay under the crib, watching. Then Daniel saw it. Renee pulled out her phone. Normal. Then something else. Not normal. A small object, metallic and round, no larger than a coin, appeared in her hand. She turned it over in her fingers, glanced toward the doorway, and slipped it under Harper's pillow. Daniel paused, heart pounding. He rewound, zoomed in, froze the frame. It was a tiny wireless camera. Daniel scrubbed forward. In a later clip, Renee returned to retrieve the device, replacing it with another, this time tucked inside a plush rabbit. The pattern repeated, 3 times in as many weeks. She always glanced around, always acted like she had something to hide. And in every clip, Sage watched, sometimes lying low, sometimes rising to stand between Renee and the crib. Her behavior wasn't instinctual. It was targeted. Then came last night's footage. Renee entered with Harper, gave her the bedtime bottle, tucked her in. Then she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out what looked like a small transmitter or remote, and leaned toward the crib again. Sage didn't hesitate. The moment the object appeared, the bobcat lunged, not at Renee's face, but at her pocket. Daniel watched, stunned, as Sage blocked the door, forced Renee backward, and only returned to her position once Renee fled. Then, Sage reached into the crib with her paw and swiped at the blankets until the hidden camera fell to the floor. It rolled once, stopped, still blinking red. Daniel sat frozen, one hand still on the mouse. His heart hammered, but his mind was eerily clear. He copied the footage, saved it to multiple drives, and picked up the phone. "Vermont State Police," said the voice on the other end. "I need to report a crime," Daniel said, his voice steady. "There's something you need to see." Detective Lena Brooks arrived that afternoon. Tall, serious, and efficient, she reviewed the footage in silence. When it was done, she turned to Daniel, eyes sharp. "This is more than enough for a warrant," she said. "Do you have any idea where this was being streamed?" "I don't," Daniel said, "but it was live. You can see the signal light." "We'll trace it," Brooks replied. "And Mr. Whitaker, your bobcat didn't just act on instinct. She intervened with precision." Claire returned home later, clutching Harper tightly when Daniel told her everything. Her hands trembled as she watched the footage. Her face drained of color when Sage knocked the camera loose. "That was my best friend," she whispered. "No," Daniel said quietly, putting an arm around her. "She pretended to be." That night, the cabin felt colder, not because of the snow outside, but because of the weight of what had been hiding within their walls. Sage lay beneath the crib again, eyes alert, but her body relaxed, for the first time in weeks. Claire stood at the doorway, holding Harper and whispering through tears, "I'm so sorry. I didn't see." "But you did." In the days that followed, Renee was arrested. A sting operation uncovered multiple homes where similar devices had been planted. And it all began with one bobcat, watching from the shadows, waiting for someone to finally understand. The predator had revealed the predator. It wasn't just their child she saved. The investigation into Renee's crimes revealed something far more horrifying and far more widespread than Daniel or Claire could have imagined. And Sage, the bobcat, had been the first to sound the silent alarm. A week had passed since Renee's arrest. Snow continued to fall in soft waves outside the Whitaker cabin, but inside, everything had changed. The Vermont State Police had turned the nursery into a temporary evidence scene. Detectives and forensic technicians moved quietly through the home, respectful but focused. Claire and Daniel, still reeling from the betrayal, had moved Harper's crib into their bedroom. Sage remained close by at all times, no longer pacing, but watchful. Detective Lena Brooks had returned several times, always calm, always direct. But on this day she brought new information that would shatter the illusion that Renee had acted alone. Claire sat on the couch clutching a cup of tea as Brooks laid a manila folder on the coffee table. Daniel joined them, his eyes dark with worry. "We traced the camera Renee planted," Brooks began. "It was transmitting to an encrypted server based in New Hampshire. That server led us to a private online forum, heavily guarded, password protected, and extremely illegal." Claire's hand shook. "What kind of forum?" Brooks looked them both in the eye. "A child exploitation ring, one that's been operating across at least 3 states. Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Your case cracked it open." The footage from their cabin, the very moment Sage knocked the camera from the crib, was already in evidence. According to Brooks, that footage, paired with archived data from the forum, would be central to the prosecution. But what devastated Claire most was the knowledge that Harper had nearly been used as content. Live-streamed, archived, possibly sold. "I let her into our home," she whispered later that night, tears streaking her face. "I handed her our daughter. I trusted her." Daniel held her tightly. "You didn't fail. You saw enough to doubt. And Sage, she acted when we didn't know how." Claire's guilt ran deep, but so did her gratitude. Every time she looked at Sage, now calmer, more at ease, she saw not a pet, but a protector. News of the case spread quickly. Local outlets picked up the story first, then regional, then national media. Headlines read, "Bobcat uncovers child abuse ring in rural Vermont. Wild instinct, human protection, how one family's pet stopped a predator." The Guardian under the crib. Reporters requested interviews. Wildlife experts debated the ethics of keeping a bobcat as a pet, only to be silenced by the facts. Sage had prevented what no one else could have detected. Brooks returned with updates. 5 more arrests. The ringleader had been Renee's secret boyfriend, a man with a long digital trail and a darker offline past. Claire felt sick when she heard that Harper had been marked as Tier 1 on their list, meaning priority for distribution. "I don't want to hear another word," Claire whispered. "I just want it to be over." Then came the court date. Claire, Daniel, and Harper sat in the front row as Renee was led into the courtroom in shackles. She looked smaller than Claire remembered, more fragile, but that did little to soften the fury inside her. The prosecutor laid out the charges. The judge, a silver-haired woman named Justice Keller, addressed the room with quiet gravity. "But it was not human vigilance that exposed the crime," she said. "It was an animal's instinct, a bobcat named Sage who refused to let evil pass unnoticed." Sage's name echoed through the chamber. Even the judge gave her credit for the arrest. Claire, tears in her eyes, held Harper close. The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. Renee would serve a sentence long enough that she'd never again walk free. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but Claire offered only one statement. She wasn't just our pet. She was Harper's guardian, and ours too. Animal Control and the Vermont Wildlife Authority issued a special commendation for Sage, an unprecedented move. She protected what we couldn't see, Daniel said during a quiet interview at home. She felt something none of us did. 1 month later, Harper turned 1. They celebrated with close friends and family in the snow-covered backyard. No decorations, no cameras, just love and peace, and Sage resting beneath the pine tree beside Harper's stroller. Detective Brooks dropped by, smiling warmly. "She's back to normal," Claire said, watching Sage. "No," Brooks replied. "She's what she always was. We just didn't understand until now." As Harper cooed and reached out a mittened hand toward Sage, the bobcat nuzzled her gently. The past had not broken them. It had revealed who truly stood by their side. The real story wasn't just about what Sage had done. It was about what she had protected, and what she refused to allow. Time passed, but the memory of what was nearly lost never faded. And in the quiet moments, under the snow-heavy branches beside the sleeping crib, Sage remained. Not just as a pet, not even just as a protector, but as a legend, born of instinct, proven by love. It had been 1 year since Renee's arrest. Winter had given way to spring, and spring into the full bloom of Vermont summer. The Whitaker cabin, once a place of hidden threat, had become a haven again, filled with laughter, warmth, and the scent of sun-dried pine. The nursery had been returned to normal. The security system, though still active, felt less like a warning and more like a quiet witness. Harper, now toddling unsteadily through the grass, explored her world with wide eyes and an unstoppable curiosity. And always, within a few paces, was Sage. Claire and Daniel had emerged from their ordeal more bonded than ever. Claire, once hesitant to speak publicly, had shared her story at a child safety awareness event, insisting that sometimes our protectors wear fur instead of badges. Daniel had accepted an invitation to speak at a national veterinary conference, delivering a talk titled "Instinctual Guardianship in Rehabilitated Wildlife: The Case of Sage the Bobcat." And Sage, who never sought attention, never posed for cameras, had become something of a quiet celebrity. But none of that mattered to her. Her world was small and perfect. The child she watched over, the woman she had chosen, and the family she had guarded with her life. But with attention came questions and pressure. Local officials, under scrutiny for allowing a bobcat to live in a home with a child, debated new policies. Wildlife groups clashed, some calling for stricter regulations, others citing Sage's story as a reason to revisit assumptions about animal intelligence. Then came the letter. An official from the Vermont Department of Wildlife requested a formal behavioral evaluation of Sage to determine if she should remain in a domestic setting or be transferred to a sanctuary. Claire was stunned. "They want to take her away," she whispered. Daniel read the letter again, jaw tight. "We won't let them." The Whitakers rallied their community. Neighbors who once avoided Sage now signed a petition. Local press published a heartfelt op-ed titled, "Let the Guardian Stay." A flood of letters came from across the country, families, teachers, even trauma counselors, all testifying to the story's impact. Claire contacted Detective Lena Brooks, who spoke publicly. "I trust that animal more than I trust most people. She didn't just protect that child. She exposed a criminal operation and saved lives." At a special hearing, Daniel presented the security footage. Claire brought Harper, who reached for Sage from her stroller and giggled as the bobcat nuzzled her cheek. The room fell silent. The panel deliberated for hours. The risk was real. Sage was still a wild animal, but so was her courage. When they returned, the lead officer stood with emotion in his voice. "We cannot ignore what Sage has done. Her actions fall outside any category we've prepared for. But sometimes, so do heroes. We grant full clearance for Sage to remain with the Whitaker family under special protection status. Applause filled the room. Claire cried openly. Daniel held Harper in one arm, and Sage, true to form, simply blinked in the soft light, as if nothing had changed. From that day forward, Sage lived without restriction. No more debate, no more surveillance. She belonged, by law, by love, and by legacy. Claire illustrated a children's book titled The Guardian Beneath the Crib. It told the story of a mysterious cat who saw things no one else could, and saved a child because she knew, without words, that something was wrong. The book became a quiet bestseller. Proceeds went to child protection services and wildlife rehabilitation centers. One page was dedicated simply to the ones who watch in silence and guard when no one is looking. Years passed. Harper grew. Sage aged gracefully, still strong, but slower now. On quiet evenings, Claire would sit on the back porch, watching the two of them, child and Bobcat, resting together beneath the pine tree where it had all begun. And though the world never forgot what Sage had done, in the end, it was never about the headlines. It was about the silent bond that formed when instinct met innocence. When one soul said, "I will stand between you and harm," and meant it. Sage never needed praise. She only needed to know that Harper was safe. And as the stars blinked to life over the Vermont sky, she curled once more beside the sleeping girl she had chosen to protect, just like she always had.